What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I can finally showcase the Hisuian Zorua line in the Hisui Cup as they have now correctly been unbanned, and let me tell you, it was well worth the wait. I know I've been quite negative in the intro of my last few videos, but that's because I knew these Pokemon, whilst difficult to play, would likely be the most fun Pokemon I've tried out all season, and I can now confirm that was absolutely the case. Honestly, this is the most fun I've had playing the Go Battle League in quite a long time. Now, if for whatever reason you didn't know, Hisuian Zoroark is one of the most attack-weighted Pokemon in the entire game, with an attack stat of 163, but it also has one of the best typings in Ghost and Normal, meaning it only has one weakness to Dark types, and realistically, the only Pokemon you'll see in this meta with a Dark type fast move is going to be Spiritomb with Sucker Punch, but I was actually incredibly fortunate not to see a single one whilst running this team. So basically, you're going to have play into pretty much everything else in this meta. Now, what you might not know is that Hisuian Zorua at level 50 only gets into the 1300 CP range, but it still has a higher attack stat than anything else you're likely to see in the meta at 148, which is greater than Lucario and Sneasler and just shy of Haunchcrow, but realistically, you're not going to be seeing any Haunchcrow in this meta. Now, I'm pairing it with Hisuian Samurott in the lead, which is supposed to be my hard answer to Drapion, although you'll see in the battles, it's not nearly as good of a matchup as you'd expect. But anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What has been the most fun Pokemon you've built this season so far? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Samurott into Gastrodon. So whilst my backline is not going to be weak to the Gastrodon, it is nice to see it here just because they've got so much fast move pressure, and as I mentioned, the backline is incredibly glassy. So we go for the Icy Wind, we actually grab a shield there. I'm also going to match shields, at least initially. The opponent does just bait with a Body Slam there, but now I know I can tank the next Body Slam fairly comfortably, especially since I have debuffed their attack. I'm actually now going to bank the energy, swap into Zoroark since they are debuffed. The Mud Slap's not doing as much damage, and the opponent comes in with a Shadow Drapion. Now I'm full sending Shadow Ball, and unfortunately they actually shield that up there. Despite it being resisted, that would do a ton of damage. The opponent fires off the Aqua Tail. So at this point, unfortunately, just barely not going to reach a second Shadow Ball. Forced to go for the foul play. That's non-stab. It is resisted, so unfortunately, it doesn't really do that much damage, and Aqua Tail will get the KO. So in a very difficult situation here, I'm going to come in with my Zorua. If the opponent commits to the crunch, I can actually swap out there after 3 snarls and go for a CMP tie sack swap. But not only that, what I don't want to do is allow Gastrodon to farm me down. So I go for the undercharge, hoping to put them into range, but I can snarl them down. But no, I'm actually not able to do so. So I'm forced to throw here. Nightshade gets the KO there. That is pretty painful for me to have to throw, but I am able to outpace them to the next Nightshade. Nightshade gets the KO there. And their final Pokemon is going to be a Drifloon. I will not reach the Shadow Ball. I'm forced to settle for the Nightshade. But Nightshade still gets the one-shot up against the Drifloon, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to that trainer there. Into the next battle, we're going to see a mirror match. Hisuian Samurott in the lead, and at this point, I'm recognizing they're probably not going to be on X-Scissor, in which case, I can no-shield whatever they throw here, and then I'm going to bank the energy, swap into my Zoroark, and whilst this is still going to be resisted damage, foul play from this range should get the KO. So we fire off a foul play straight away. We do get the KO there. The opponent comes in with the Gastrodon, and you can see these Mud Slaps are absolutely shredding through our HP. We're going to go straight for Shadow Ball, only reaching one move, and Shadow Ball is unfortunately shielded there. But that's okay, I'm going to come back in with my Samurott here. The opponent does not throw straight away, which means I can just go straight for a Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse grabs the final shield. I'm then able to swap, and of course I was in range where they could just go for Body Slam, so Body Slam double resisted, and the opponent actually swaps into Drifloon here, and that is absolutely fine with me. We've already just seen Nightshade gets the one shot up against the Drifloon. The opponent has to commit to a full farm down here. They're not going to do so, so I can just safely shield up the Body Slam, fire off the Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball will be more than enough damage from this range to take out the Gastrodon, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see Samurott into Shadow Drapion. So, like I mentioned in the intro, you'd think this would be a really good matchup, considering you are, of course, going to resist the typical charge moves. However, that is just not the case here, as the opponent going to go straight for Crunch. You can see Crunch does quite a lot of damage. Samurott, honestly, glassier than I thought it was going to be. I didn't really look into the stats before using it, but we go for the Icy Wind, and you can see we don't even win the zero shield scenario. So, at this point, I'm going to shield the Crunch here, and then going to swap into my Zorua, trying to get an energy advantage into into whatever they've got in the back. I'm hoping, since they had a dark type in the lead, they do not have a response in the back, and that looks to be the case as they come in with a Shadow Dust Noir. Now, I resist everything they can throw here. However, I am very glassy. I recognize I can shield once, commit to the full farm down, and the opponent forced to swap into their final Pokemon, which is a Drifblim. But I've got such a huge energy advantage. Foul Play grabs the final shield, but I can reach a second Foul Play. And Foul Play actually gets the KO there. We can Shadow Claw, farm down the Dust Noir, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see an Empoleon in the lead. So, both going to hit for resisted fast move pressure here. The opponent is going to be on Metal Claw, so slightly faster to the charge move than we do get to that Dark Pulse. I'm just going to full send the Dark Pulse here. There's no point going for an Icy Wind. That is double resisted, and Dark Pulse does connect. We swap into Zoroark, but they do respond with their Shadow Drapion. So, once again, full sending the Foul Play. Foul Play is unfortunately going to be shielded. Honestly, I thought since they would resist everything, that opponents might let the Shadow Ball go through there, but turns out I was incorrect. So once again, forced to settle for just a Foul Play here, but we grab the shield with the first move. We do grab a second shield there. So at this point, of course, Crunch will be getting the KO. I'm going to wait out my switch clock here, come in with the Zorua, and once again, going to look to try and make a catch here, but the opponent does not farm up to the Crunch. I'm kind of forced to shield the Arquitel there, just because it would do quite a lot of damage. The opponent tries to make the catch. I'm able to get the full farm down there, and now I'm settling for the Nightshade. I'm hoping this is enough to KO, but it does not take them out there. I'm forced to swap Snipe with my Samurott, but we just barely miss out on the Icy Wind, and whilst, yes, I do reach a Shadow Ball, Vespiquen, fairly bulky. Shadow Ball doesn't quite get the KO there, and the opponent does now have enough energy for the Power Gem. Power Gem easily takes out the Zorua, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Gliscor in the lead, and they're actually on Sand Attack rather than Fury Cutter, so that makes this matchup quite a lot more comfortable. The opponent is going to fire off the Aerial Ace there. I'm now going to overfarm just a little bit. It's quite hard to judge whether the opponent will try and make a catch. One turn move up against a one turn move, but we swap into Zoroark, and once again met with a Drapion, but this is still relatively comfortable for me. I do have a shield advantage. I'm going to use the shield there as they fire off the Crunch. I'm now going to overfarm massively, fire off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is again going to be shielded, but they overfarm too much, allowing me to reach a second Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball, despite being resisted, gets the KO there. They come back in with the Gliscor, and at this point I do have the Foul Play loaded, so I'm actually going to shield this, and the opponent on Night Slash as their secondary charge move. We swap into Samurott, but if they don't go for the Aerial Ace here, Night Slash does not get the KO. I can just barely reach an Icy Wind. Icy Wind definitely gets the KO, double super effective, and their final Pokemon gonna be Drifblim. I realize Zoroark easily gets the KO here, but once again, I want to bring in the Zorua, go straight for that Nightshade. We've seen this several times already. Nightshade takes out the Drifblim, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see Samurott into a regular Drapion. So, last time we did narrowly lose the zero shield scenario up against a Drapion, but that was a Shadow. So, regular, we can actually tank the Crunch, and of course, that next Poison Sting does put us into the yellow health range. However, now I've debuffed the attack with the Icy Wind. I should just barely live this next charge move, and I should actually win the zero shield scenario. So, the opponent actually not going to bother swapping out here. Going to let me get off the Icy Wind, and Icy Wind is going to be no shielded. Honestly, I probably would have preferred if they shielded there, just because we can then come in with Zorua, commit to a farm down, and come out with a ton of loaded energy. But now, unfortunately, I am behind in this matchup, and there's just no way I can flip this now, as the opponent will be outpacing me. I fire off the Foul Play on the CMP tie, winning CMP, but that's probably the best I can do here. So, unfortunately, forced to let the Zorua go down, and Snarl just doesn't have much fast move pressure, despite the fact that we are very attack weighted. Snarl just not a very hard hitting move there. If we had Hex, potentially I could try and swap, make a catch here, and then commit to a full Hex farm down, but Snarl non-stab, not doing as much damage there, and it doesn't really matter. They've got Gastrodon in the back anyways, and whilst technically I could have gone for the Shadow Ball there, Shadow Ball still would not get the one shot, as Gastrodon fairly bulky, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's up in there into the next battle, and speaking of Gastrodon, we see it in the lead here. So once again, we are going to, well actually, I'm going to shield here as the opponent does go straight for a Body Slam, as once again, I can now go for the Icy Wind, and Icy Wind will just guarantee that I very comfortably live a Body Slam here, and the opponent ends up shielding anyways. So this time, gonna let the Samurott tank that next body slam. They swap into a Dust Noir. I'm going straight for the Dark Pulse here. Dark Pulse gonna be not respected. We can now come in with the Zoroark, get that Shadow Claw farm down. They're gonna come back in with the Gastrodon, and this is absolutely fine with me. I can fire off the Foul Play. Foul Play probably doesn't quite get the KO from this range, but it does grab the final shield, and the opponent, they need to commit to the nuke here, because a body slam is not gonna cut it, and as a result, we reach the Foul Play. Foul Play will, of course, get the KO there. Their final Pokemon, gonna be a Frost Sass, and once again, Ghost type in the back. We've got a shield advantage. This is absolutely game over. I can just safely shield up the Avalanche, go straight for the Nightshade. Once again, I do not need to commit to a Shadow Ball. Nightshade is gonna be enough damage when it does connect to eventually take out the Frost Sass, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top on there into the next battle. We're going to see Samurott into a Vespiquen. So I'm going to swap out straight away as we do take super effective Fury Cutter damage. And once again, baiting out a Shadow Drapion. And once again, we are full sending the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to be shielded there. And at this point, I think we're just going to let Zoroark go down here. Crunch does, of course, get the KO there very comfortably, but now we've got a shield advantage. We can come back in with the Samurott, and again, we should be able to sponge this damage relatively comfortably. However, that is not going to be the case, as Crunch does quite a lot of damage, but it also drops my defense here, and that is actually going to change this game, because now I'm forced to throw the Icy Wind here. Icy Wind does get the KO, but I cannot reach another Icy Wind up against the Vespiquen coming back in, so forced to swap out there. Going to come in with the Zora. We do correctly shield up the Power Gem. The opponent then swaps into a Shadow Dust Noir, and again we can go for the Nightshade. Nightshade not going to be respected. It does huge damage, but here I make a big mistake. I was thinking, now that I cleared the debuff on my Samurott, I should still reach an Icy Wind, so the safe play, just go straight Nightshade here, and I will be able to get to that charge move, but that is not the case. We don't get there, and instead, if I just committed to Shadow Balls there, I think I probably would have won this game. But Power Gem takes out the Zorua, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. We see Hisuian Electrode in the lead. Honestly, not that bad of a matchup. Of course, they will outpace me to the potential wild charge here, and they are going to full send it. The opponent is now debuffed there. They're forced to swap out into a Bomber Snow, so a second grass type. But, of course, they're going to hit for resisted Ice type damage with their fast move. This time I'm full sending Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse gonna do big damage, and it will force the opponent to throw their energy. They also have to go for the energy ball there, and it does get the KO. But now we can come in with the Zoroark. They did overfarm just slightly with that Hisuian Electrode, so I'm just gonna shield this up here, and I should be able to fully farm them down. The opponent fires off the wild charge. They're gonna have Drifblim in the back, and that is absolutely game over. Firing off the foul play here. Foul play is going to grab the final shield from the opponent. I'm now going to overfarm considerably in this matchup. Didn't really need to do so. Foul play gets the KO there, and we can now go for another foul play. I couldn't remember how much energy they had, but either way, doesn't matter. Foul play takes out the Electrode, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to put there into next battle, Samurott into Drifblim. So this is a positive matchup for me. I can just stay in here. Eventually, I do want to swap out if the opponent does swap there. And the opponent is going to swap into a counter Shadow Toxicroak. So we're going to go for the Icy Wind, grab a shield there. And at this point, I can just commit one shield and then commit to a huge Shadow Claw farm down. They full sent a Dynamic Punch there, so not on my bomb. We get the farm down. And if they come back in with the Drifblim, we've got 100 energy. We go for foul play. Honestly, foul play probably wouldn't quite get the one shot here, so might as well full send the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball does guarantee the KO there. They come in with an Ice Fang Drapion, so that's still fine with me. We can come in with a Samurott, even if they go for Fell Stinger here. That is not going to do much damage. They do go for it. They boost up their attack, but of course, I can just debuff them straight away with the Icy Wind. An Icy Wind should hopefully put them into range where I can get the KO with a Nightshade, but since they throw on alignment here, we've got enough energy for the Shadow Ball. I think the safe play, just fire off the Shadow Ball here. And of course, Shadow Ball, despite being resisted, will be taking out the Drapion, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into next battle. We're going to see Samurott into Licky. So, definitely where we want to see it with two Ghost-type Pokemon in the back. But we are going to see the opponent is going to go straight for a Body Slam here. They're going to throw on potential CMP type with our Icy Wind. So, I could have actually thrown there, but I didn't want to throw on alignment and give a full rollout through. But then I actually end up throwing, I believe, on alignment there just because the rollout animation just confuses me every time. But anyways, we do tank the Body Slam there. Now I can fully commit to a Dark Pulse here. And Dark Pulse is going to do big damage, so I'm going to swap into my Zorua. Honestly, they might have had enough energy for an Earthquake here, so I do end up shielding, but it was just a Body Slam. And the reason I swapped into Zorua, I was thinking, surely with Licky in the lead, that's the worst thing we can see with a only Ghost-type moveset in the Charge Move department, but nope, they've also got Big Barrel here, so unfortunately, they do resist the Shadow Ball, but anyways, we are going to come in with the Zoroark here, and they will outpace me to this next Charge Move. So at this point, I'm going to shield up the Surf here. I can now outpace them to back-to-back foul plays. I'm going to throw the first one here just before they do reach that next charge move. They actually no shield. We get the KO there, but they've got a Razor Leaf Shadow Torterra. So interesting team from the opponent. Unfortunately, they can just very comfortably Razor Leaf farm down the Zoroark, Razor Leaf farm down the Samurott, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Big Barrel in the lead this time around. So last time we saw it obviously aligned to our Zorua, which we had no play with whatsoever. I'm going to shield the first move here as they go for a Hyper Fang. And here I'm expecting to grab a shield. And if I do bait with an Icy Wind, I can outpace them to the Dark Pulse. But they actually call that there. If I went for the Dark Pulse, of course, guaranteed KO there. So big mistake on my end. And they then correctly shield up the Dark Pulse. So at this point, I'm just going to no shield. Since I've debuffed them, I can tank that. I'm going to swap into my Zorua. Once again, expecting with a normal type Pokemon in the lead. Surely they don't have a normal type Pokemon in the back. If they have a Dark type, that's actually okay because, of course, I can at least hit for single resisted damage, and Shadow Ball and Nightshade still going to chunk a fair bit. But they come in with a Gastrodon. I can reach back-to-back charge moves, but we are in a very tricky position as the opponent can now commit to a full Mud Slap farm down. So at this point, I'm going to wait out my switch clock, and the opponent is going to blind throw. And my only hope here is if you're expecting Samurott to come back in, they go for the Body Slam, and that is perfect for me. I can now swap out, catch the charge move here, as the opponent forced to full send the Water Pulse. Now we can commit to a full Shadow Claw farm down. The opponent comes back in with Big Barrel just to be farmed down, and I'm waiting to see what comes in here. The opponent comes in with the Gastrodon, but I slightly hesitated, so I just go straight for the foul play. Foul play, gets the KO there, and they've got Drifblim in the back, and we're so low, but it doesn't matter. Shadow Ball gets that one shot, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to up in there, and by the way, we do have a lot of battles for this video, so if you are enjoying it right now, make sure you leave a like. But into the next battle, we see a Shadow Gallade in the lead, and once again, we are met with that Shadow Drapion in that safe swap position, so unfortunately, well, actually, never mind, I was going to say, unfortunately, they're probably just going to shield here, and we will lose this matchup. However, they no shield, and committing to the farm down, but we just barely miss out there. Maybe I should have fired off the foul play. Maybe they're on 1 HP, and if they shielded there, I could have got the KO anyways. But now they're going to come in with a Licky. So this is actually not that great. We've got a 2-0 shield disadvantage, and they've got a very bulky normal type Pokemon. Pretty much the worst thing that Zoroark can see. We do still tank the Body Slam. Don't really know why they fired off the Body Slam there. But either way, doesn't really help me out. I guess they could be on Body Slam and Shadow Ball, in which case they're both resisted. But either way, we're going to come in with the Samurott. They have not swapped back into their Gallade yet. So I can just barely outpace them to the Icy Wind. Icy Wind is going to grab the first shield from the opponent. However, there's just not a lot I can do here. Of course, Snart is only going to be neutral damage in this matchup, rather than Hex, which would be super effective if we had Hex. But we are going to see the opponent is going to fire off the charge move here, and despite that fact that they are debuffed and close combat is resisted, it nearly one-shots me. They can just Psycho Cut, farm down the rest of my team, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's to that opponent there. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Gastrodon in the lead. So, of course, once again, just going to go straight for the Icy Wind here if they do not fire off that Body Slam. And typically, I have grabbed a shield with the first one. This time, they do not shield. But still, I'm happy to shield here just because the opponents might end up shielding the next Icy Wind coming from the Samurai. I'm going to throw straight away here, and the opponent is going to actually shield there, so that's fine with me. At this point, I'm going to try and catch a Body Slam, but the opponent swaps at the same time. They come in with Shadow Big Barrel, and unfortunately, we've already seen it's not a great matchup, but Foul Play does do big damage up against these Shadow Barrels. So at this point, I'm actually going to shield this just because I can outpace them to the next charge attack here. Go for the Foul Play. Of course, Foul Play will be enough to damage to get the KO there. So we grab the final shield from the opponent. I'm hoping I put them into Snarl farm down range for my Zorua here, but it is non-stab, so let's see if we can get that farm down. We come in with a Zorua here. Can we get the farm down? No, we barely miss out. I'm forced to swap out there, make the catch. I am worried the opponent might come back in with the Gastrodon, and they do, but they do not click on the charge move fast enough, and as a result, Nightshade gets the KO there. They had a lot of energy, and once again, they've got a Drifblim in the back. This time, since we can, I'm going to full send the Shadow Ball. This easily gets the one shot there. We can Snarl, farm down the barrel, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on their into the next battle. We can see Lucario in the lead now. This is very awkward for me. Of course, at least bullet punches are resisted, but I've only got resisted charge moves and double resisted Fury Cutter damage for this Lucario with my lead Pokemon, and then bullet punches are just going to shred through my backline. So, we can go for the Icy Wind here. Since they do full send the Thunder Punch, I'm actually just barely able to outpace them by one turn to a second Icy Wind here. And honestly, that's not so bad for me, as of course the opponent can now go for the Thunder Punch, get to the KO there. We can come in, get the Shadow Claw farm down. The opponent actually swaps into their Drifblim, and that is absolutely fine with me. I can fire off the Foul Play here. Foul Play is going to be shielded. Unfortunately, they just barely outpaced me to an Icy Wind before I reach a second Foul Play here. Now, I couldn't decide what to do here. I tried to commit to the farm down, recognizing it was actually going to be a simultaneous KO. So I swap out there, but my Zoroark is just so low that even though I can very easily get the one shot with my Shadow Ball up against this Shadow Palkia, I'm in range where one bullet punch gets the KO. Luckily for me, I do at least get a simultaneous KO there, and it does end in a tie. But obviously, if I played that out slightly differently there, I feel like I probably could have won that game. But GG's to that trainer. Into the next battle, going to see a Skuntank in the lead now. You might wonder, why am I swapping into my Ghost type Pokemon where my only weakness is the Dark typing? Well, that's because I am resisting the Poison Jab damage, and I'm hoping if I bait with a Foul Play, Shadow Ball should be enough damage to get the KO here. But no, they barely hang on with 1 HP and a Dream. That is agonizing, and as a result, I'm forced to just no shield here. I'm going to come in with my Zorua, as we can go for the Snarl farm down here, and let's see what the opponent wants to do. The opponent's going to come in with an Empoleon, so I recognize here I can go straight for Shadow Ball, winning CMP with the Zorua, and Shadow Ball, once again, just barely does not get the KO there. That is twice in the same match, and does this come back to haunt me here? Let's find out. They've got a Gastrodon in the back. I banked the charge move, but because it takes one turn to swap out, I am not able to reach the Icy Wind here. The opponent is on Earth Power. Earth Power gets the KO, and unfortunately, there's nothing I can do anymore, and so I do just let them farm me down there, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's to that trainer. Could have been very different if at least one of those Shadow Balls got the KO there. But anyways, into next battle, seeing a great lead matchup, and just this entire team does very well into Drifblim. The opponent is going to shield there. I probably could have gotten away with going for an Icy Wind there, actually. I don't really know why I didn't, because then I could just snipe with my Zoroark, but either way, they're going to reach a second Icy Wind, but now I can come in with the Zoroark, and of course, these Shadow Claws absolutely shredding through their HP. We can fire off the Foul Play, able to outpace them as well, as this is on their third cycle. Foul Play gets the KO, and again, we're met with a Drapion. But we do have a shield advantage, so I'm happy to shield here, as the opponent does bait with an Aqua Tail, of course. Honestly, they can probably just get away with going straight Aqua Tail in this matchup here, because we just take a lot of damage, but Shadow Ball does big damage in return. So at this point, I'm going to shield this. They do full send the Crunch this time around. I'm committing to the farm down. We don't get it, but we actually get the snipe with the Samurott, and they've got a Palkia in the back once again. That should be game over. Icy Wind grabs the final shield, and I'm pretty certain I banked a Shadow Ball when I swapped out there, so just going to go straight for it. Shadow Ball easily takes out the Palkia, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on their into next battle. We're going to see Samurott into Dusknoir. So, once again, another Ghost-type Pokemon where we have such good play with the entire team. I'm going to stay in initially here just because I can outpace them to the Dark Pulse if they're on Astonish before they do reach a Dynamic Punch. And now we can swap. We do resist everything. This is a non-Shadow Dusknoir, so I'm going to no-shield. That still does quite a lot of damage there. But they swap into a Fury Cutter Shadow Glide Score, and Shadow Ball gets the one-shot. They do not respect the damage. They're going to have Vespiquen in the back. They've just been one-shot by a Shadow Ball. They're probably going to use a shield here. Foul play does grab that final shield, and this should be game over. We can come in with the Zorua here. I'm just going to play this safe. I'm going to double shield the Zorua. I don't care if they bait me twice with Fell Stingers. Just don't care. I'm going to guarantee we get rid of the Vespiquen here. The opponent's going to swap back into Dust Noir. I win CMP with the Zorua. Nightshade gets the KO there, and they're definitely not reaching a power gem this time around. We can just settle for the Nightshade, and from this range, it takes out the bulky Vespiquen, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to opponent there into next battle. Going to see a Shadow Ursaluna in the lead. Very spicy lead from the opponent. And we actually pace to the same if they're on Swift, which apparently they are. So, we're going to go for the Icy Wind, grab a shield from the opponent, debuff their attack. And I recognize I can actually outpace them by one turn to the next charge move here. But instead, what I'm going to do is bank the energy and come in with my Zoroark. I don't know if that was necessarily a very smart play there, but we are going to try and bait out any potential dark types they have in the back. But they're going to come in with a Gastrodon, so I'm going to go straight for Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to, of course, be shielded there. Pretty much whenever they had shields, they are going to shield the Shadow Ball, but they go for a Body Slam, so they do not get the KO there. At this point, I am going to come in with my Samurott. Going to go straight for the Dark Pulse here. Dark Pulse is going to connect. It does big damage. I can now swap, catch the charge move onto my Zorua. And at this point, of course, going to commit to a Snarl Farm Down. The opponent not going to allow it, and they do come in with a Drapion. So they had a normal type and a dark type Pokemon, which is very unfortunate for this team. But we can, of course, fire off the Nightshade. And if the opponent commits to a Crunch the second time around, I should actually be able to reach a Shadow Ball. This is resisted damage, but we do hit very hard. Shadow Ball coming through. Does not get the KO there. That is super unfortunate, but it does put them into Fury Cutter farm down range. So Crunch gets the KO. We get the farm down here. If I can farm down the Gastrodon, I'd come out with the Icy Wind loaded, and I would be able to get the KO up against the Ursaluna. But unfortunately, two Fury Cutters do not cut it up against the Gastrodon, and we do lose that game. Pun intended, by the way, with that Fury Cutter pun. But anyways, it's the next battle. We're going to see the opponent's going to safe swap into Drapion after giving me a huge energy advantage. And this is fine. This is where we want to see the Drapion, especially on Ice Fang. They're going to be much slower to get to the charge. We also resist it. So I'm actually going to go for a cheeky undercharge here, just because I recognize, I mean, even if they go for like a Fell Stinger here and boost up their attack, doesn't matter. I can Fury Cutter, farm them down. I'm still very close to the Icy Wind. Now, they come in with Lucario, but they're going to be on Force Palm. So I can debuff their attack, swap into Zoroark. The opponent comes back in with the Drifblim. So at this point, I'm going to shield up the Icy Wind here, and I will now be able to overfarm. I'm going to farm up two back-to-back foul plays, expecting to grab a shield here, but the opponent does not shield. Then I'm going to come back in with Lucario, and despite the fact that I'm resisting these Force Palms, Force Palm is hitting very hard, and we do not reach the foul play, and suddenly I'm starting to panic here. I'm like, wait, are we going to lose this game up against Lucario? The opponent is going to farm up, fire off the Thunder Punch there. I did think about trying to make a catch there, but I thought the opponent might try and overfarm. But we barely hang on. We just about live the Thunder Punch there. And of course, Nightshade gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there into next battle. We're going to see Samurott into Skuntank. So, last time we did swap out straight away. So, this time I might just stay in here. I will be able to outpace them to the first charge. We've, of course, expecting them to go for a Trailblaze to boost up their attack. I'm going to shield anyways, even though I'm debuffing their attack here. But they actually shield up the Icy Wind, so I don't mind that. The opponent is going to fire off the Trailblaze, boost up their attack once again. They swap into Gastrodon, so at this point, I've already grabbed the shield. I might as well full send the Dark Pulse, and Dark Pulse is going to do big damage. We can now come in with the Zoroark, and I am just going to shield here. If they full send the nuke, which they do, I can now commit to the Shadow Claw farm down. But they're going to have a Shadow Mamoswine in the back. So we fire off the foul play here. Foul play grabs the final shield. I maybe should have tried to throw on CMP with the next charge move here from the opponents, because as a result, they go for a full farm down and they have a charge move loaded. So I'm forced to basically come in with the Samurott, sponge the energy, well, basically just tank it. They actually full send an Avalanche there, but we come in with the Zorua, and unfortunately, a resisted Nightshade, even though attack weighted, does not get the KO. It doesn't come close up against this Skuntank, and obviously a Crunch will be taking out the very glassy Zorua, and I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there into the final battle of this video, once again leading into Gastrodon. And by the way, if you've made it this far, then fair play. Obviously, this is a very long video, especially for the Hisui Cup, where there's just not really an awful lot of variety whatsoever. I just had so much fun with this team that I just had to include as many battles as possible. So this video probably going to be about 30 minutes long, but if you are enjoying it, then I guess it was worth it. But anyways, we fire off the Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse does big damage. I believe they do come out with a nuke move loaded, so I'm going to shield. The opponent does actually just settle for the body slam there, so that is very unfortunate, of course. I think I debuffed their attack as well, so that would have done pretty much no damage whatsoever, and they've got Drapion in the back, so this is going to be very difficult for my team, but they do no shield the first move, so of course I'm going to shield. They do full send the Crunch as well, so what we're going to do here is we are going to overfarm, swap, catch the charge move. Crunch will very easily take out the Zorua here, so now we can commit to the farm down. They swap into their final Pokemon, a Drifblim, and that is absolutely game over. I farm out 2 back-to-back foul plays. First one grabs the final shield. I can just go straight for the second foul play here. Foul play easily gets the KO there, and the opponent is going to be fully farmed down by the resisted Shadow Claws, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.